Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Times Exclusive, airing on Times Network. My name is Banda. Thank you for joining us. In this edition of the program, I'm honored tonight to have the interim country director for Plan International, Phoebe Kasoga.
I love brilliant green on my walls. I love signal red, sweet lime, electric blue. I just love golden yellow.
You get all that and more at Rainbow Paints. Imagine a water-based paint that is water-resistant. Imagine a paint that is absolutely washable to remove dirt. And it guarantees you 10,000 cleaning scrubs over its lifespan without losing its luster. There can only be one paint that does just that, and that paint is acrylic sheen. Get yours today at all leading hardware stores. Rainbow Paints. Peace of mind. Part of the deal.
Madam Kasoga, thank you very much for joining. I don't know if I've pronounced your name very well.
Yes, you have.
Okay.
You've done a good job.
And welcome to Times Exclusive tonight.
You're welcome.
You are the interim country director for Plan International.
Yes.
We see a lot of Plan International, but maybe our viewers, they don't understand what you stand for. What is your core business?
Okay. Our core business as an organization previously has been around programming for children, delivering development programs that positively impact the lives of children. But in the recent past, over the last about 3 years, 4 years, our focus has really been on girls. So while we really work hard to advance the rights of all children, we pay special attention to the rights of girls particularly. And in a country like Malawi, certainly we find that to be very relevant in terms of our work. So currently our programs focus on child protection, basically ensuring that all forms of violence against children are tackled, that we have mechanisms in place that prevent violence against children, but should that violence also occur, that there are response mechanisms, that there is referral. So in some cases, we will also provide, say, pro bono services, legal services for girls whose rights have been abused. It might be a defilement, it might be rape. Now, the other part of our program focuses on inclusive quality education. And why we call it inclusive is because we want to make sure our work actually engages all children. It engages them in their diversity, whether it's children with albinism, whether it's children with disabilities. We want to make sure that our schools promote that environment for the children. But also, most importantly, that the aspects of quality are also addressed. The other program that we really support is sexual reproductive health and rights. And coming, of course, from a backdrop that we know there is really very high levels of teenage pregnancy, and sometimes we know also access to contraception is something that is a challenge for our young people. So we have young people ending up perhaps, pregnant when they did not plan to be pregnant, which is also driving perhaps numbers around child marriage. So specifically, I want to pause a little bit around child marriage, or the part of our work that focuses on child marriage that is anchored within the protection thematic area. And the reason we have it there is because in Malawi, the worst forms of violence against children really rotate around these child marriages. I don't know to what extent you have noticed recently. There was an article in Nyasa Times of a very young girl carrying a baby.
Yeah.
We always joke that they are babies carrying babies.
Yeah.
And you see that quite a lot. It varies as you move from one district to another. In some districts, it's quite pronounced. So that forms part of what we do, but also most importantly, what we have integrated across all our programs are aspects of gender equality, and girls' rights, to make sure that in all this work, we pay specific attention to girls as a demographic group. Now, the other last program that we look at is our work around disaster risk management, which looks at resilience building at community level, but also should a disaster occur, we will then respond. Like recently, we had the flood situation with Cyclone Idai.
Yeah.
We went in to respond. So broadly, our programs will focus on that, but also we do recognize that underpinning all our work, poverty is a major issue. Some of our parents cannot pay development fees. While primary education, for example, is free, there are those fees the parents need to buy: uniforms, stationery, scholastic materials for children. So livelihoods as well is something we undertake. It doesn't stand out as a flagship program, it's mainstreamed across all of our work. So that comprises broadly the work that we do here.
Let's talk about the teen pregnancies. How big a challenge is this problem?
We've actually been looking at this as a major challenge. We've looked at statistics, and we find that the numbers of teenage pregnancies here in Malawi, we do not have a lot of information around it. So it's something we are partnering with a research organization to look at just those numbers in some of the districts where we work to understand the magnitude of the problem. But in our experience, in our day-to-day work, we find, speaking to some of the healthcare practitioners, we find that this is a problem. And the reason why perhaps our statistics might not give us the numbers perhaps as they are is because even when some of our girls fall pregnant, they may perform illegal or unsafe abortions. So the only way healthcare providers will get to know is when they have a complication and they come into a health facility. But those illegal abortions that are performed and perhaps end up going well for some reason, then those don't get reported. So in terms of the magnitude of the problem, I think that is something we need to pay a little bit of more attention to and make sure that we really have the realistic numbers.
You know that abortion is it's a big issue, especially in the West. Your thoughts on the same?
My thoughts on the same, abortions are a problem across the world. But I think what makes it different, say if I compare the global north and the global south, is that of course, in the global north, if for example a girl has been raped and she falls pregnant, then she has an option to say, okay, this pregnancy, I do not want it. But certainly in the global south, our programming pretty much, or our own reflections around these issues, are driven by our religion as well. So some of our religions will not promote that. Even from a policy perspective, in most of our governments, abortions are illegal. So it's a paradox. And the reason I say it's a paradox is it's like we are hiding our heads in the sand.
But our young girls are accessing these abortions.
Not legally. Because like in Malawi's context, it's illegal. And so is the case in many African countries, that abortions are illegal. It's quite a delicate topic. People have very personal sentiments around it. For me, what I would say, okay, if abortion is illegal, then what we need to ensure happens is that they have access to reproductive health services that will reduce the occurrence of these illegal pregnancies.
But what about young girls? Because you talked about young girls having teen pregnancies, babies and teen pregnancies. How do we help them, for example, if there are complications?
So for those young girls, if they have complications, certainly all healthcare providers, the main imperative is to save life. There is no healthcare person, there is no doctor that is passed out to be a doctor that does not swear the oath of saving life. So saving life is a main driving factor in any health sector. So they will come in. They will not come in to ask a healthcare provider to say, I need to do an abortion, because everybody understands it's illegal, but also sometimes people feel ashamed to come forward. So they will do all sorts of things. But if things then go wrong, they come into the healthcare facilities and they will be supported. They will be assisted. I've not heard of a situation where a medical doctor sends back a girl, So it's important that they have access to postnatal care, especially. Otherwise, then they will have lifetime complications,
And what about child marriage?
My take on child marriage, particularly having been here now almost 2 years, is that the numbers of child marriages are still quite high. And my personal view is that there are a number of factors that have been key driving factors around these child marriages. One of them is poverty as a key driver. So our parents are opting to marry off girls because of very small money, bride price. The other thing is around our social norms. Our social norms, basically teach us that if a girl gets pregnant at home, it's a shame to the parents. So some of our parents then, as soon as they realize their daughter has gotten their first period or menses, then they have matured. They prefer to marry them off than wait and go through the social exclusion of society. So that is something we really need to pay attention to. Yes, it's important to please society, but at the end of the day, these are our children. And we, as parents, are the ones that can set the pace for them. It is us that can place them on the right track. If we want to marry them off because we think they've matured, I think we're cutting short their potential. Because, I always say it's a vicious cycle of poverty. You are born in poverty, you're raised in poverty. And the likelihood that you'll have so many children is always very high because, there is a feeling that when we have many children, they are a source of social protection. They are a source of comfort. But I think also what is important is ensuring that these children can be raised in a manner that will be very productive for them as well. Yeah. That if I'm a parent and I never went to school, I want to make sure my child goes to school. And if I attain a diploma, I would want my child to attend perhaps a bachelor's. Yeah. That we raise the bar. With every generation, we raise the bar. Yeah. But otherwise, then it means it's generation to generation to generation, their lifestyle will always be the same.
So as Plan International, you are focusing also on this problem of ending child marriages. Yes. Are you winning?
I would say yes. Small steps in the right direction because of the magnitude of the problem. But we have invested heavily. In terms of ending child marriages, we are working with chiefs. Yesterday we had an event where we're commemorating the International Day of the Girl Child. And Chief Teresa, we always joke that she's the child marriage terminator. We recognized her as our ambassador on ending child marriage. Because we do believe that those people that hold power in the community also have a right to stop some of these, or they have the power to stop some of these practices. Like what she's doing and saying, no, in my community, we will not marry off any girl below the age of 18. In my community, we are encouraging girls to go to school. So we need role models like that. We need champions like that, that will say to our parents, no, let this girl go to school. There will be benefits, because what happens is education normally has perceived long-term benefits that we do not see in the immediate future. Because when you ask a parent, for example, okay, sponsor your daughter to go to school, they don't see a benefit right away. They are worried that she might get pregnant, drop out of school, she'll get married tomorrow, and then I've educated her, she's going to support the family of her husband, and she'll forget about us. So from that perspective, then our parents sometimes will make choices that may favor boys over the girls. That's why we're saying we are paying attention to that. When you come to the family, when we look at decision making in the family, in many families, men make these decisions. So we want to make sure that the fathers like yourself understand this, that you support your daughters. If you have friends, we would want you to be our ambassador to say, educate your daughters, because your daughters can equally amount into something that you'll be very proud of. Today, for example, I am very proud that Malawi has a female as the Speaker of the National Assembly. The country where I come from, which is Uganda, we have had a female as Speaker of Parliament for a very long time now. And she has done a commendable job. She has a fund to take girls to school. So I think there are positive steps in the right direction. We had her as well at the event, and we want, we as an organization, certainly we are a non-partisan institution, and we want to work with her in her capacity as a woman.
Okay.
But also the second deputy speaker as well from Mangochi. She is also a woman coming from a community that is predominantly Muslim. She has a story behind her. She can be used as a champion to promote education of girls. So that's what I'm saying. We are making wins or making gains in the right direction. In the South, we are working, for example, with female initiators. We are saying these initiation ceremonies, per se, as a cultural part of our culture, are not bad in themselves. But I think we think the content or the way these are done, perhaps are exposing our girls, to the risk of engaging in early sex. That is perhaps going to drive them. Like they need to get information so that should they make a choice to engage in sex, then they should be making sure that either they have access to contraception or something, because we normally will promote the ABC. We say abstinence, be faithful, or use a condom. So we focused more certainly on the abstinence in Malawian's context. That is something that everybody will promote. But still, we cannot forget that there will be people that will be unfaithful.
What have you discovered to be the number one cause for early marriages?
I still will say one is poverty.
Poverty?
Yeah. Because our families sometimes think if I marry off my daughter and I get dowry, I get food for today, without looking at the longer term. But two are the social and cultural norms, basically, that have stereotyped girls in a certain way. To say, in some of our African communities, if you are a woman and you just give birth to only girls, it can cost you your marriage. The family of your husband can just, gang up and just say, why don't you get a child, even if outside wedlock, but a son? Because that is what society has taught. But I always joke and say, we have had these American presidents, from Bill Clinton, he only had one daughter, Chelsea. We went to President Bush, he had those twins. We had Barack, he has his two daughters, and very comfortable. They've not had, issues because they have girls. But these guys have money. If we are talking about money, they have money.
Yeah.
So I think we need to look at the world broadly as a global village and stop boxing ourselves in this, in this environment that brings those limitations. I would say girls are equally good. If my father had said, my daughter is going to get married tomorrow, then he would not have sent me to school.
You would have not been
I could not have been here. So myself, I am, in my own judgment, really, a role model of sorts as well.
Yeah.
Because I lost my father when I was 17, and during the burial of my father, our kinsmen said, because my father had left a will, and he said, I've written this will under no duress, and under no circumstances should this will be changed.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, my daughter will be my heir when I pass on to the next life. And of course, my father had sons as well. So the family said, no, the boys, have to inherit their father. She's going to get married next year, or even this year, And all that is discussed, when you've lost a loved one, you're in pain.
Yeah.
So that is discussed in my hearing. And I made up my mind. From that moment, I say to myself, I am going to work hard.
Yeah.
When I was in school, people used to call me a bookworm. The reason they called me a bookworm was because I had no other life. And I purposed that my time in school was going to be beneficial. I gave it my best.
Yeah.
And that enabled me to excel. So I was able to go to university on government scholarship. And even when I started to work, I made sure I put in my best. I do not come to this office because Plan pays me a good salary. I come to this office because I believe that the experience I've gone through can be used positively to change the lives of girls out there or children out there. And even if a single day I touch just the life of one girl, it is worth it. If I wake up in the morning and I have unfinished work, I will wake up, even if it means 3 a.m. in the morning, I will wake up and get that work done, because I am not doing it for me. I know that whatever I do will potentially impact the life of somebody somewhere. I might never get to know them. I might never get to meet them. But sitting in this office gives me the opportunity to make decisions that can positively impact the lives of girls.
Madam Kasoga, we have to take a short break. We will be back with you in a moment.
Thank you so much.
In case you're just joining us, you are watching this week's edition of the program Times Exclusive on Times Network. I'm joined by Madam Phoebe Kasoga, the interim country director for Plan International. We'll take a short break. We'll be back in a moment.
I love brilliant green on my walls. I love signal red, sweet lime, electric blue. I just love golden yellow.
You get all that and more at Rainbow Paints. Imagine a water-based paint that is water-resistant. Imagine a paint that is absolutely washable to remove dirt. And it guarantees you 10,000 cleaning scrubs over its lifespan without losing its luster. There can only be one paint that does just that, and that paint is acrylic sheen. Get yours today at all leading hardware stores. Rainbow Paints. Peace of mind. Part of the deal.
You are watching this week's edition of the program Times Exclusive. I'm joined by Madame Phoebe Kasoga, interim country director for Plan International. Welcome back to the other half of the program.
Thank you so much.
Let's quickly talk about gender equality. Hearing you talk tonight, I see how passionate you are about the girl child. But we should also not forget that there is a boy child, isn't it?
Yes.
Because sometimes we may forget.
I hear you. Just before we closed off, I did talk about my father. So I am one of those that believes in the role of men in achieving gender equality. So in this journey, we are not excluding the men. What we are saying is that if you will allow me, use a quantum or a scale of 1 to 10. If boys were at a grid of 6, maybe girls at a 2. So what we're trying to do is to bridge that, reduce the gap between boys and girls. And suddenly we recognize that there will be pockets of our young men as well that might be at that 3. So while we are focusing on the girls, we will certainly bring along the boys. Because when you come to think about it, when these girls get married, the dowry that is raised, even where I come from, it goes to your brother. If your brother needs to get married, then they will marry off the girl. So we get dowry that my brother will use to marry his wife, isn't it? So the role of boys becomes very important. And brothers normally love their sisters. Brothers are very protective of their sisters. So if we exclude the boys, I don't think we will make any headway in what we are doing. We also need the men. We need the men to support us. Again, I know so many women that are role models, but the men in their lives have played a fundamental role. Because if you go home and you have an antagonistic husband, your mind will not be at rest. You will not function well at work. And you know, sometimes these jobs take us to places you travel. You need the trust of your spouse for you to be able to go and do whatever you need to get done. So the role of men is certainly fundamental, and we do not want to underestimate that role in any way. So as we advance...
My worry is that by over-emphasizing on the girl child, are we not going to reach levels there where we completely forget about the boy child?
I wouldn't think so, because it is something we are paying attention to. And that can happen in the global north.
Yeah.
There have been cases where, now we are saying men are the ones, like the gender equality journey has skewed it on the other way, that sometimes, the men are the ones that may need to be protected. But that takes many years. In our context, in the African context, from all fronts, the way we have been socialized, the way our societies are set up, they are set up to place men, at a certain level. We will use a typical example at community level, say in our villages. When we cook maybe meat and the meat is not enough, the father has to get enough.
Yeah.
And many times children just take the gravy or the soup of the meat, because we as parents think that this needs to go to the head of the household, which is good. It's a sign of respect, and we know that that is important in any marriage, in any relationship. But I think we need to get to a point where we can have that dialogue, and that is what we want to do in the work we do, that at family level we understand that there will be power dynamics. So we want to make sure that our men as well recognize the role that women play at home, even if she's not a working mother. Every day she wakes up in the morning and prepares tea for you, prepares lunch for you, washes your clothes. In the morning you find everything ready. So it's important that we recognize that there's a role they play, even if they may not be the breadwinners of the house. I think they can contribute in terms of how resources are allocated. So that is what we're saying. At whatever level it is, can we get our men to that level?
Yeah.
That they will recognize the role of women. They will not look at them as a property. Normally when we do what we call the asset mapping in gender, we normally will put certain pictorials or visuals that will tell us how some of our men think. So if you had, say, a picture of a radio, you had a picture of a car, you had a picture of a woman, a picture of children, and then you say, okay, and you have a picture of a man and a woman, that is a couple, and then you ask, can you map these assets? You will be amazed. Some men will map the woman as an asset under them. So with that reality, we are saying we recognize there is that power imbalance sometimes, not always.
Yeah.
We know that in every society there will always be those positive deviants, that go the extra mile, that totally appreciate the role of women, that appreciate the women in their lives, that appreciate their girl child, but also we have those extremes. Unfortunately, those on the extreme side are more than those that are not on the extreme side.
Yeah.
So we need to bring those along. So we will not get to a point where we're forgetting. If it happens, maybe it will be 50 years from today. And if it did happen, I'm sure there will be somebody to stop that. Maybe we will not be alive by that time. Maybe we'll be alive by that time. Somebody will stop that.
Equity or equality?
Equality.
Not equity?
I normally do not want to say equity, because sometimes when we say equity, it's like we are saying men and women sometimes are the same. I think we realize that we are not the same. You have your God-given role as a man, and as a woman, I also have my role. But I think the appreciation around equality is that we want to be treated as equals. In this relationship, can we come to a level where we are saying we are equal? If you're traveling, you came from Blantyre today, I'm sure you told your wife, I will be traveling out of Blantyre, and I will be coming back tomorrow. There are women who will sit in their houses and wait for their husbands, and they will not come back the whole night. They didn't tell them I will not come back. And when they come back and the woman asks, where have you been? It will lead into battering.
Yeah.
So, and that happens a lot. It doesn't only happen in the global south, it also happens in the global north.
Yeah.
That, the husband doesn't want the wife to ask him where he's coming from. But what is different between the global north and the global south is that in the global north, if you did that, there are laws.
Okay.
You will have to go through, say, an anger management class.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So in a way, women then have been protected.
Yeah.
That if I get a violent husband that will fight over anything, I can't ask him anything, the law will protect me. But in our context, even if there are laws, it's very hard. The levels of poverty sometimes, when a man has committed a crime, sometimes even defilement or rape of their own children, and they are put away in jail, the family will come and say, you've let your husband go to jail. Who is going to be the breadwinner at home? So those compromise some of these cases, and then families prefer to settle them out of court. Those are the realities we live with. Because people will say, okay, if your husband is in jail, who is going to put food on the table?
Yeah.
And the woman will think about it and say, okay, I have to get out my husband. And sometimes they'll even change their statements. In that case, is gone. So in that way, we perpetuate that cycle. So I hope that helps to bring some clarity in terms of the role men can play on this journey. So what we're saying is that if we went to a community and we are looking at education, we want to look at how that environment affects girls different from boys. In some of our communities, before a girl comes to school, she has to go fetch water, she has to go get firewood, she has to clean the house, she has to wash, do laundry before she comes to class. By the time she comes to class, she's already tired, she's exhausted. Yeah. So certainly she is starting from a more disadvantaged position, isn't it? Yeah, so those are some of the issues we are saying we are dealing with. That is why we are fronting the girl child in the work that we do.
So I understand you running an initiative called Girls Get Equal.
Yeah.
Is this what you are standing for?
Yes.
What do you want to achieve with this project?
With this campaign?
Yeah.
We have this campaign that is focusing on amplifying
voices
of girls.
Girls Get Equal.
Get equal. Certainly we can say, okay, you asked me about equity, you asked me about equality, and I said we want to bring women and girls, to a level where we have equal decision-making power, for example, in the different spaces where we are. So this campaign specifically, and I want to focus on, say, our theme for this year, since you're from the media fraternity. This year, this campaign is focusing on representation of women or girls in the media industry, digital, and all forms of media as you know it. And to support our work, our global organization conducted a research. And that research had a gender lens to it, and this organization that conducted it also is in the media industry. And findings around it are very interesting, that the likelihood that women will not play critical roles was very high. There's numbers that have been presented. The likelihood that girls will be objectified sexually in these movies is very high. If you looked at directors in these films or in the film industry, you hardly find women in that industry. If women are there, sometimes they are acting. Yesterday at the event we had in commemoration of the International Day of the Girl, I was asking the young girls to say, we have these popular movies. Maybe those movies from the global north do not make a lot of sense to us in the African context. But we have movies we love here, like, there is what we call the Z World. I don't know if you know it. But you'll find, especially girls, women are glued on Z World. Or we have Bollywood, the Nigerian movies. Not Hollywood, but Bollywood, the Nigerian movies. And people are glued on them. But have you thought for a moment that many times, in those movies, either women will be wives, or they'll be the ones having an affair, maybe jumping from one man to another. There is a way it objectifies women. And we do think that, or believe that, we need equal representation in this space. Like I said, it would be nice to have a lady behind that camera. One of our ambassadors for this campaign is Maria, who perhaps you might be knowing, a renowned photographer here in Malawi. And the reason we have Maria as our GGE ambassador is because she has broken the stereotypes. In her footage, she actually shows herself struggling until a point where she had to jump on a chair in order to be seen, in order to be able to take a photo. So we want to be able to give women equal space, equal opportunities, if they have what it takes. We are not saying favor women. We are just saying if they have what it takes, let's give them the opportunity. We have Anisha, who is a Commonwealth Award winner in boxing in Malawi. And she's also our champion as well. it depends on how people look at that sport, but certainly we recognize that it's a legitimate sport. And speaking to Anisha, she said, doing this, she has entered a field that is dominated by men. But can we have women in these industries talk about it? How did they make it? We have an engineer who is our ambassador as well. And she's also a lecturer. She's a mechanical engineer. We also have a Malawian young lady, I think from the north of the country, that plays, football as well. And she's one of our ambassadors as well. So what we are saying, we are challenging gender stereotypes. Where we see them, whether in media, on TV, in print, and in other spaces that may relate well to the community level. Because when you talk about media, news, print, for our girls in a village, that doesn't make a lot of sense to them.
Yeah.
But in everything that we do, that when we are choosing chiefs, certainly in the south, because of the matriarchy, we have female chiefs.
Yeah.
In the north, predominantly, we have men. But I do believe that there can come a day when we have women in those specific influential positions.
Are we winning the battle against poverty? Because hearing you talk tonight, a lot of things are hinging on poverty. You have been in the country 2 years now. Are we winning the battle against poverty?
I would say yes. Again, small steps in the right direction. And why do I say that? Dealing with poverty is not a linear process.
Yeah.
But I think what is important is making sure that whatever we do gets these families to another level, takes them higher up on the poverty ladder, that they do not stay where we found them. That is what is most important for us. And in the communities where we work, like you said at the beginning of this program, the communities, the families, the men, women, girls, boys in Malawi recognize the role that plan plays in this country. And the reason they recognize that is because the work we are doing pretty much is relevant to them. Yeah. Because if you're to address poverty, education is very important.
I'm asking this question because when you hear a government prioritizing stadiums and not schoolrooms or classrooms, or empowering the girl child, how do you react to those decisions?
Certainly, like I've said, we as an institution, we try as much as possible to maintain a balance and not to be partisan. I understand this issue of stadiums, as I've had my colleagues talk about it. It's very, very, what should I call it? It's something that has come up for discussion. And what I would say that for any program to make impact, you always need to check with the beneficiaries of that program. Yeah. That is what we do on our end. That when we design programs, we will go back to the communities, we will have focus group discussions, we will find mechanisms of getting feedback. What are the programs that are game changers, that will change the status quo for these families, for these communities? So for me, what I would say is, in order for us to have any program, if we're going to make progress, let's engage the beneficiaries of these programs. What would change their lives? What would be a game changer? What can we do that can uplift them out of poverty? If it is the stadiums they come up with, fine, go with them. But if it's not, then maybe we as programmers need to stay back a bit and allow the voice of the beneficiary. We cannot be making decisions for them. By the fact that they are poor, it does not take away their right to contribute positively to any debate. So without understanding the topic of stadiums, I'm just speaking.
You're not understanding. You're not understanding.
I don't have a lot of information about it. I have had a few colleagues talk about stadiums being constructed. I don't have a lot of information about it. I'm now just speaking generally as a development practitioner that the most important thing with any program is involving the beneficiary. Even you yourself, if you wanted to buy a plot of land, unless it was a gift somebody gives to you, you want to be able to go and scout all of them and make a choice. That way we drive ownership of this program. But the moment we don't consult, there is no ownership, there will be no sustainability. then you're going to have white elephants. That's what we call them in development.
Yeah.
That you build a facility and the community just says, for us, we've been getting water. Our grandfathers got water from that well. This borehole you've put here, we will not use. And we have those as well in the communities. Not we as plan, but we as development practitioners. We have some white elephants because we did not consult the communities.
You played a very important role as Plan International when the floods hit us in the Lower Shire.
Yeah.
How do you rate the impact?
In terms of the impact, certainly big, because when a flood occurs, it basically sweeps everything.
Yeah.
Food, people's houses, people's livelihoods overnight, those are gone. So for those that have been affected, certainly we feel for them. We know that given the level of poverty in this country, a flood only makes it even worse. So the impact on this has been big, and perhaps it's going to also, in a way, impact on our ability to have enough food or food production.
Do you think you still have a role to play, or you are done?
We still have a role to play currently. Since the families have resettled back, we have gone back now with resilience building, that if there's any other flood that happens, you know that the communities will be more prepared.
Yeah.
Even us ourselves will be more prepared. But also, most importantly, we focused on livelihoods. How can we support these families get back?
Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Quite interesting when you have a good conversation. That's when also time runs out. You have been in the country for 2 years now.
Yes.
Probably more. Have you learned any Chichewa? Can you give me a sentence in Chichewa? A sentence, not a greeting.
I can't give you a sentence in Chichewa, but since we are coming to the end of this show, I will say Zikomo Kwambili. Thank you so much.
Your last thoughts tonight to our viewers.
My last thoughts tonight, given the subjects or the issues we've discussed in the show tonight, one is to our parents, to all those that will be viewing this program, is to say to them that girls are equally important as boys. Let's not underestimate their capacity. Let's not cut their future short. Let's not cut their potential short. Let's give them an opportunity to live their lives and be able to attain that God-given potential.
Your impression of Malawi?
Beautiful country, very friendly people, very similar to the country I come from. Uganda. You know. Very good. I can get matoke. We eat a lot of matoke, so you have a lot of matoke coming from Karonga. So I often go to Nchesi to buy matoke.
Okay.
So I have good impression. I can get pretty much what I need. But also from a programming point of view as well, the communities have been very receptive, which is very good.
Madam Phoebe Kasoga, Interim Country Director, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
Well, on that note, we conclude this week's edition of the program Times Exclusive. In this edition, I've been talking to Phoebe Kasoga, Interim Country Director for Plan International. She's a development practitioner. My name is Brian Banda. From all of us here in the administrative capital, Lilongwe. Goodbye.